morning or good afternoon, folks, depending on where you are. My name's Joe Furla, and I'm going to be leading today's Secure the Dashboard Insight Edition bootcamp. We've got a reasonably quick one today. Should come in right at around the 45-minute to an hour mark. But let's go ahead and get started. As always, we start with our legal check-in, if you will. So first things first, please note today's session will be recorded for quality control and training purposes. If for any reason you should like to get your hands on a recording, I cannot send it out. However, in the Enable You portal for YouTube, you should be able to find a version of this when it goes up. So you'll see here quickly, I just pulled up our channel. Underneath the playlists section, there is a full bootcamp playlist down here at the bottom. If you do want to search through the video section, you can always Control F and see if it's there. For those of you who are on the N-Central side of the house, there is an N-Central version of this that we will be looking at posting as well. So if you join this by accident from N-Central rather than Insight, keep a lookout. Jason Murphy and Paul Kelly did one of these as well. Anyways, I also cannot send out the deck from today's session, but let's be quite honest, it is a very bare bones deck because today we're looking for demo, not really for content. Please also note I am not dev nor am I PM. So if we do talk about any forward-facing items today, please note I'm giving you the most accurate information that I have, though they are subject to change, as I do not control dev or PM. So for those of you I have not met before, my name's Joe Furla. I've been here at Enable for 7 years. I started with the company within channel sales. Got quite quickly initiated into the fact that I'm not the best at the sales. I do make a good consultant, however, and I decided I was going to learn our product inside and out, which fit me very well for the sales engineer position. I was offered a position as a sales engineer and sat there for quite some time before being given the opportunity to help create our partner success management team. I was there for a number of years, as I was one of the original 6 PSMs, and then found out, just like in channel sales, I may have been a bit too technical for that particular role. So I got offered the position for head nerd. I originally started the head nerd position as the insight and operational efficiency head nerd, and that quickly evolved into Mac, as well as Cloud Commander, Analytics, MSP Manager, Mail Assure, Take Control, Passportal, and the like. If I missed any of our other tools, don't worry, I work with them as well. So kind of the generalist on the nerd team, and quite happy to be here today. More importantly than who I am, however, is this like little bottom or middle right section where you got my contact information. You can reach out to me via email. Catch me at joseph.furla@enable.com. You can always reach out to me on Reddit. You'll find me as Head Nerd Joe, or even on LinkedIn. And I will happily answer any questions you folks may have. If we need to set up meetings based off of your questions, I'll be happy to entertain them. And it doesn't have to be limited to just Enable product or Enable stuff. One of the things I like about the nerd team is we're here for the market. So if you have questions about, automation, maybe within another tool set, or you want to talk about a backup that's not ours and how maybe we can monitor it within a RMM platform, I'm happy to do so. If you need to talk about sales and marketing or operational efficiency, I'm down for that as well. If you'd like to discuss, anything, even if we go so far as to the pros and cons of, Breath of the Wild versus Tears of the Kingdom. You want to talk about why rugby is one of the greatest sports of all time. I'm happy to entertain that as well. And then for those of you who haven't met me before, as I know I met a lot of you last time I was in Australia, I did actually play rugby. One of the few, I think, Americans who can say that. Any users. All right, our last couple housekeeping items. For those of you who are aware, the All-Star program is still running. For those of you who aren't aware of what the All-Star program is, pretty much it's a way for you to join a program to accrue points as you work towards continuing your success with and without Enable. Be it something like attending these boot camps or our office hours or going to an Enable You course, showing up to Empower, acting as a product advocate, taking some of the things that we've learned, bringing them into other platforms, and then going into a customer interview for UX. Hey, I saw this other platform did this. How could you guys bring it in? These all will help you accrue points. More points you accrue, the more stuff you get. To shamelessly plug, you get Head Nerd swag. You get enough points, you can start doing things like custom one-on-ones with the nerds. And then, of course, our top earners always get recognized at Empower, which segues quite nicely into Empower 2025. Will be held April 7th through the 9th in Berlin at the Intercontinental Hotel. I don't have much on Empower right now. We're still a number of months out, but you will find our registration pages up if it's something you'd like to take advantage of to get the early bird specials. If it's something you'd like to get to learn more about our schedule or speakers we already have lined up and the like. Empower, at least from the nerds side, is shaping up to be a great conference this year. We're very pleased with the content we have so far. We'll be presenting in it. For those of you who have attended another Empower or have attended any of our other large conference events, this year we're going to take the nerds from some of the breakout sessions and then start putting them more into the main stage and limelight section, which is quite nice. Stephanie Hammond bringing her sales and marketing series as one of the headliners. So wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You definitely want to check that out if you come to Empower. I learn something new about sales and marketing every time she speaks, and it's just a wonderful series. So, skipping our agenda, because our agenda is to learn more about security within our platform, we're going to hop right in and we're going to hit what I guess we could say is the beginner items to the advanced items for securing the dashboard inside Insight RMM. We're not going to focus on our security tools per se. We're not here to delve into EDR. We're not here to delve into MAV or web protection or that kind of deal. We're here to look at how we can help protect the sensitive information within our dashboard, as well as access to our dashboard. And the place to start with that upon startup of using the dashboard is going to be within the general settings section. Okay. General settings is, of course, where we are going to house our dashboard access, and then we're going to look at bringing some additional into our user management. So let's pop over to our RMM and we will get started. All right, so first place we're going to start is going to be underneath our settings. So we'll come to our settings dropdown. First option, if you have permissions for it, is going to be our generals settings. Here we've got a number of security items. where we can start off with the simple security labeled section. And this is where we're going to control things like our session timeout, access, and restricted access to the dashboard. So first things first, I know I have mine set to 4 hours here. Please, let's not do this in the real world. All of us, I don't really care who you are here, are guilty of walking away from our machine with the dashboard up and not locking it. It's going to happen at some point in time. We can't get around it. So we have our session timeout setting here to look at when we come in and come to hit our timeout, we're going to automatically get logged out. I know it's frustrating to log back in. I know MFA can be a bit of a hassle. I've got to find my phone, I've got to find my codes, I've got to get in, I've got to go to my password solution or something like that, right? It takes a couple seconds. In my mind, this is inconsequential to the fact that if somebody walks away from their device, if somebody who shouldn't be in the dashboard's in the dashboard, that's a much larger security breach. The timeout can help us, especially when we bring our laptops on site, where we're logged into the dashboard to get some scripts run on devices that may be a couple desks away. We don't want to walk there, which is perfectly fine. We've got to go to the restroom. We forget to lock our device or exit our dashboard. Right, we can run into problems. So session timeout, 15 or 30 minutes in my mind as a best practice. I'm going to keep mine set as 4 hours so that I can make fun of myself in subsequent boot camps. The IP address restriction section is going to give us the option to look at auto-detecting new IP addresses and approving them with email verification. Okay. We also have the ability to restrict the dashboard by IP address, where auto detection is disabled, and we can allow remote access features with IP address verification, okay, where we can come in and say, hey, we don't need 2FA, okay, but we'll email verify to use remote access tools. Not the biggest fan of this, point blank. Anything that says you don't need MFA, but you can add security here, in my mind, sure, extra security is great, don't get me wrong, but bump it, we're going to use MFA. Okay, we should not be looking for a way around that, right? It is one of our defenses. And I get that it looks at here covering some of our butt with remote access, but it doesn't cover our butt with scripts. It doesn't cover our butt with checks. It doesn't cover our butts with tasks or uninstalling things and that kind of deal. Okay, so we need to focus on these first two settings. Auto detect new IP addresses. This is my preference. Or restrict by IP address. Now I can edit items on this list down here, whether I am restricting by IP address or auto detecting and approving via email. So I can come in and say, all right, here is some much older dates. The user's no longer in here. I can remove this IP address to get it off my list, right? I've got Mark Andre. He hasn't been in here. Well, he was actually in here last month, right? But I've got, say, 2020 here, Andre, right? Or here, another user that's no longer in the dashboard. I can clean these up as I would need. All right, I can add IP addresses here as I need, especially if we're looking at restricting by IP address. Okay, but I like the auto detection. It allows our technicians to be a little bit more mobile with our laptops. It allows us to track our email verifications, and it puts some nice actions within our user audit report where we can vet these. Outside of that, where we're going to see some security within the general settings is going to be underneath our agent management section. Now here, we're not so much looking at access to the dashboard. And I know I said that's what we're going to focus on a lot today, but here what we're looking at is the ability to control our uninstall behavior, which can help prevent, say, malicious threats on our end users, or end users trying to prevent you from monitoring what they're doing, where we can first off get a removal alert if a agent is removed, right? We see that down here. Just enter the email you would like like to see if an agent's removed. And then also down here, we can bring in our agent uninstall protection. What this will do is force us to get a verification code at this admin email or technician email, whichever level we trust in our organization, so that they are then forced to either give that code to the technician performing work or utilize that code themselves to uninstall the agent. And remember, this is locally uninstall an agent, and it's specifically for Windows devices. Mac, we're not going to need this uninstall protection so much because there's going to be other fail-safes put in place by Apple already to prevent this. Okay, and with Linux, we just rarely see end users that are smart enough to look at doing something like this, and very rarely do we ever see even scripts or something like that that are going to be uninstalling on Linux, right? Especially coming towards an RMM agent. And so some nice security here. We do have the ability to, maybe not within the security realm, but to control a little bit more of our dashboard. Say we want to delete workstations from our dashboard that are older than 60 days and up. I've got 90, and then get an email notification that they're going to be deleted at that 90-day point, X days before that setting is properly set. Just some cleanup items that can limit some very old devices maybe turning on and having some older agents on them, and before they're getting auto updated, somebody finding a vulnerability to exploit or something along those lines. Okay, just some nice cleanup for our inactive workstations. So some good generalized settings that we can use to start to put some layers of protection within our dashboard. The next section is going to be our user accounts. We'll start off with client groups. Maybe not the biggest security item, but at least something that's going to start limiting views within the dashboard so we don't have technicians or end users or admins or whomever's in the dashboard poking around where we don't want them to. So I can come in, select a group of clientele, okay, give them a nice name. We'll call them Joe's Test Group. Save this. And then when we come back to our users and user accounts, we'll be able to apply that client group. We'll see that in a second. Let's hold that idea in the back of our head. Once we've set up our client groups, though, my next step would be roles and permissions. The 4 defaults that we have, super user, standard, client, and administrator, in hierarchy level, super user, admin, standard, client, are very good base roles, but they're really designed for testing, or at least in my opinion, in the real world, for, I shouldn't say testing, I should say cloning to provide proper permissions. So if I want to add a role, I'm able to do so, and I can base it off of whichever role I would like. So here we'll start with super user. Okay, and I can granularly go through a lot within this dashboard. Super user, I'm going to give a lot of permissions to. Pretty much going to make sure everything's turned on. There may be 1 or 2 things that I don't want that super user to get their hands on, but it's going to be pretty wholeheartedly, you have control of the dashboard. Now, if this is, say, a technician that I'm basing off of the standard role, okay, I'm going to come in and start looking at, okay, maybe I want them to be able to edit sites, but I'm not editing clients. they can come in and uninstall and edit devices where they can interact with the agent. But I don't want them having site installation packages. I want them to have to manually download it. Okay, my engineers, my onboarders get site installation package. My technicians are getting the repair, right? I want them to have access to my quick links or external links, but I don't want them to have settings to any of these. So I can turn them off, or in the event of quick links, you know, you're all or none. You either get to use the link or you don't, right? I'm going to give them access to system help and support tickets, but I don't want them looking at release notes. That's my job. I'm the admin. I'm the educator. I want my technicians to focus on what their day-to-day is and refining their skills with the tools they have, not looking to the future to see what's coming or what was just released. My job as a service director or operations director is to educate them and let them know once those features are there and they can see them, right? And I'm just able to limit so much here. I could limit reports they can see, right? My, tier 1 technicians, they probably don't need to see who took control of a device when. They definitely need patch management, probably need backup if we're doing any type of backup reporting within the RMM still, right? Do they need to see what features are turned on where at a global level? Probably not, right? Do they need to see what's added or removed? No, I don't need them in the user audit. That's my job, right? But these other reports, they seem to be quite nice for our technicians. I'll let them have them, right? And it goes through. We'll see usage, okay, settings, as well as view permissions. So usage, settings, and view permissions for most of our items. Okay, this especially comes into play when, say, I'm going to be taking the standard template and turning it into an MSP admin, right? In a larger MSP, once I'm above my service operations director or my just operations director or service delivery director, and I'm getting into that VP and the C level, I'm just going to come through here and in all honesty, I'm going to kill all usage. I want them to be able to see everything, but I really don't need them using anything. That's not their purview. Their purview in here is to make sure we're doing our work and work on the business, not go in and do something for somebody, right? So I'm going to lock this down almost to a view only realm. Same thing would go for, say, an end user. They're even more locked down than those VPs and C-level folks. Okay, but we get where I'm going with this. I'm coming in and I'm looking at applying conditional access style permissions and controls to the individual roles at my organization, just like I would in Microsoft. We do it there. Why shouldn't we be doing it here? The one caveat that we're going to see to this is going to be our agent key. Our agent key is going to be the initial user that signs up for the dashboard. That agent key, for all intents and purposes, will be a super user, except a super user cannot use product or show product keys by default. The agent key can. So if I'm looking at, say, a CEO or a VP who signed up for the initial trial, did some vetting, and then passed it on to you, Mr. or Mrs. Operations Director, I may want to come into, when I'm looking at adding users here, and disabling that agent key access. And then I can set up a service director level role for myself, where I can come in and I can see those product keys just like I would if I was an agent key. I'll just have to customize it. Okay. But each of these things, the groups and the roles, comes into now I am able to assign these to users as I would need, okay? And I'm going to be able to control conditional access to the dashboard. I'm going to be able to control what is seen within the dashboard. Please note, if you remove an entire section, my tier 1 technicians cannot mess with users. Obvious example, they're not going to be able to see users in the settings dropdown. I don't want them to see user audit reports. It's not going to be there in the dropdown. It's going to be removed from their view. So they won't even know what they don't even know. What we also have here is the ability to come in and reset 2FA, as well as reset passwords, and control 2FA and passwords from this particular section. Now, if I come in and disable IP address verification, you will note that I will be able to remove 2FA from that user once I save. We're not saving here, okay? And by default, MFA is turned on until you find a way to say otherwise, okay? This is always, in my opinion, on. MFA is a necessity. Let's please not remove it. I cannot repeat that enough. Okay, so here we have two sections where we're going to start locking down access to the dashboard and some access to the agent itself through roles, permissions, client groups, and users, as well as our general settings security section and our general settings agent management section, which is all well and good for us, right? But that brings us to the, okay, I can control who gets in and who can see what, but we haven't done anything where we're directly impacting security on the heavy bits, or the stuff that's really gonna mess with my end users, right? And that's the remote access. If a malicious actor gets into an RMM, they're there for scripting, they're there for remote access, and they're there for remote command line access. Let's be quite honest, right? They want those controls. So what we have inside the dashboard is going to hit us we're in a couple places. We'll start off with our settings, take control, and our policy section. Here, inside our policies and the aptly named security section, I can do three things that I think are going to be a necessity. One that's going to be a little bit of a should you or shouldn't you, we probably should. So the first one's going to be request end user permission. Point blank, I think it's something that we should do. The better we are at our jobs as MSPs, okay, the better we are at doing everything incognito, right? You guys are fans of Futurama, and you know the episode where Bender becomes God. I think God as the best quote that applies to an MSP. In his particular, in the episode's particular case, the quote was, "You're doing well at being God if nobody knows you're doing anything at all." All right, for MSPs, switch out God and MSP. We sell productivity and peace of mind through the lens of cybersecurity. Point blank. The less they know I'm there, the better I am. So I like the request permission text here, not only for a, hey, MSP wants to ask, can I do what I need to fix it, right? Or can I do this, or can I do that, right? It also gives us, hey, I need to know if an end user's here, yes or no, okay? More often than not, they always click yes, right? They're the one who submitted the ticket. And we have an ability to delay this request for X number of seconds. And if it times out, allow remote control. You'll have the ability to lock the device when the remote session ends. These three are my necessities. Now, in my particular case, I know we came in and we saw this was unchecked. I don't have that privilege. One, because I'm doing demos day in and day out. And if every time I wanted to take control of a device to show something off, I had to wait 2 minutes, people inside the demos would be jumping through their screens while we listened to Elevator, hold music, and trying to pummel me. All right. But in the real world, I had this set to either 120 or 90 seconds, depending on my customer specifications. And I always lock the device when a remote session ends. We do a lot of work after hours. I'm locking that screen the minute I'm gone because I do not want anybody but me being in there. Okay. We'll add a visual indicator as a security measure. Okay. But these three are really locking down who can do what from within the dashboard, or what's going to be seen from within the dashboard. The authentication method of a preset or OS authentication to take control of the device is you probably should be doing this, but you have a reasonable chance of convincing me you're not gonna. But I still think it's a nice piece of security to have in here. Typically, when you're trying to convince me you shouldn't really have to do this, you're also telling me you're handling, say, a mom and pop marketing firm, right? Very little IP on the devices, very little personal information on the devices, that kind of deal. But if we're in a vertical like medical, legal, financial, even weirdly enough to say manufacturing, I believe this is a necessity. Okay. So we've got some good ways to lock down, take control. Now, I was a bit late in checking my questions as they came in. So we're going to back up a smidge and we're going to go back to our users. Okay. And that's going to be client groups. Is this what I should use, or can this be used for co-managed? 100%. Okay. Is Insight the best RMM platform for co-managed? That is a conversation topic for another day, as that is a rabbit hole we don't need to get into right now. But let's say I sign a large organization and they have signed for patch management, outsourced tier 1 help desk, and security. Every single user or technician that is inside that client will be in a client group that, depending on their permissions or their needs, is limited to more than likely just that client group. Okay, technicians on my side, maybe they get to see another client or two. Okay, technicians on their side, it's only them. Admin on their side, users on their side that may have to have access to the dashboard, they're getting into a client group that can only see that company point blank, no problems. Okay. And I think this is a necessity, right? Especially when we look at co-managed starting to put us in the realm of, I may be running into, my higher compliances, my higher levels of security, my higher levels of PII security, the whole 9 yards. And co-managed, even more so than our own organization, should we be locking down as much as we can. So a nice question here. Hey, when users remote connect via RDP to their office PCs, will this request user permissions work as normal? Because I cannot see their screens until I log in. Well, yes, it'll work per normal. Our intention being, if we need to get to the login screen after 90 seconds, you'll get in, log in as you would need. Okay. If we're looking at doing something where we're taking control of a host device to get into some type of guest, or a host device to get into thin clients, that starts to get a little bit wishy-washy. Okay. But more often than not, situations that you're going to be in where you are taking control of a device from another device, the request user permission is going to work as normally intended, okay, where you're either going to be hitting the timeout or logging into that device. You'll hopefully see the pop-up saying, hey, you're logged in now. Can they take control of your device? Okay. Good questions, both of those. All right. Remote background is going to be easy, namely because there is no policy here. It is remote background off? Is it on? Do I require a dashboard password? Yes, 100%. Leave your checkbox checked. I think we need this. Okay, pretty simple security. Now, these are the two primary ways we are going to be taking control of devices. The next way we're going to look at actually interacting with devices themselves in a fashion similar to take control is going to be backup and recovery. If we still have the access within the RMM to come into a device, let's see if I have one here, and come to what's called the backup manager, right? We're going to want to be aware of this because I, again, tend to feel this is, for all intents and purposes, taking control of a device, because I can come in here and I can delete backups. I can come in here and I can restore where I need to. And it's not quite the best thing to have floating around out there willy-nilly. Okay? And where we are going to see this is, first off, do we want to accept remote connections? Can I take control of this device backup-wise from another world or another device? Yes or no. And then the advanced, where I can set alternative users and passwords to get in here as I would need. Okay, I can lock this down pretty well. Now, underneath the backup policy, you will note that there is also a protect the local backup manager, not for additional users, but for everyone, where I can come in and say, you need to know this password. You need to be entering this password to even get into the backup manager, authorized user or not. Okay, so some additional settings when we're looking at this take control. Okay, the one exception we'll see here is going to be our chat. Our chat is not password protected, but it is end user protected. You cannot do anything until the end user requests or says, I will accept this chat. Okay, so please, when we're using this with our end users, let's have a good education event with them. Hey, we are updating our support. I'd like to take 15 minutes to talk to your organization, or lump it into another training exercise that you're working with so that they know when you're trying to chat, they're going to see a pop-up and they're going to have to come in and click accept, or you can't talk to them. Okay. So some nice options there. Please note, as a word to the wise, underneath settings for take control here, we're not going to get anything underneath that remote access settings section. All right, that is just going to bring us to off and on. Everything's got to be done through settings, take control, and remote background, and then the policy or the settings respectively. All right, bear with me, checking on some questions here, making sure I didn't have any before we get to look at moving forward. All right, so the last section of this, we're going to call this our advanced section, okay? Just because, you know, it felt a whole lot nicer when we were in here to enter in beginner, intermediate, advanced, than, you know, just 3 blank sections. So bear with me one moment while I get myself logged in to my devices. Admin by request account, and then pop open the automation manager. All right, so here when we look at scripting, we're really going to be starting within the automation manager, or at least this is where I'm going to think about putting a good amount of my security with scripting into my platform. Okay, we're just going to call this new policy, and we'll just call it password testing here. Right, and we're not really going to make a script that's going to actually do anything on a device. We're going to make a script where we want to see what the behavior is going to look like when we are loading it on a device within the dashboard. Okay, so we're not really going to go through much within automation, but we are going to take a look at some security features. And the big feature that we are going to hit here is going to be the type password, where I can come in and name it, and I can give it a display, and we're going to look at having inside here anything that is credential based or anything that is access based or say API based that's going to be needing to be redacted when we pump it into a script. One of my nice examples of this, I know I said we wouldn't create anything, I promise we're not gonna, would be the opening and closing of a SSH session, okay, or the sending SSH commands, okay. SSH commands a little bit less, but definitely the opening of it. Server name or IP, 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other, which you put here. Username, probably think it should be redacted, but you can link this however you would like, be it to a string or to a password item. I'm okay with that. The password section, however, 100% needs to be redacted. So we're going to call this admin@msp.com. Okay, and we're focusing on the fact that our password is now redacted. If I have anything where I am going to bring API keys into the dashboard here, we need to be thinking about it. If I have anything when I am going to be bringing PII that I wouldn't want a malicious actor or an end user to see, where available, let's use that password field. Okay, so we're going to go ahead, we're going to save this real quick. And let's save it. Oh no, that was where we wanted to be. Nope, go back. Do what I want you to. We'll call this 1 so I can clean it up pretty easily. So we'll exit out here. We will then quickly hop back over to the RMM. I'm going to come to settings, script manager, new password testing. We're going to call this AMPW object testing, automated task on a Windows device. Bear with me while I get it in here. Save it, close out, come to my device. We will then add an automated task. Here we go, password testing. And here I will put in my password. And it is nice and redacted. Okay, I have the ability to make sure that at rest, okay, my password is redacted. In travel, my password is redacted. Now, this does come to some limitations within the automation manager, and it does come to some limitations within, say, password management within scripting as a whole. Okay, and that's going to be, well, sometimes it's just impossible to keep passwords 100% safe. Okay, you're always going to see passwords at some point when you run a script. Okay, I don't know a way around it. I don't know a way to keep them fully redacted. For those of you who are in the session, if you know a way to keep them fully redacted as we're running them within a PowerShell script, I would be thrilled to see it, because I don't think there is. When the script is running and we're entering in those passwords, at some point they are going to be readable. Okay, so I don't mean to say here that the automation manager is infallible, okay, in the management of a password, but I will say we're pretty darn good at it because we can keep it redacted at rest, whether that's pumping it in as a variable into a run PowerShell object within the automation manager, or taking it and pumping it into a little bit less complicated object like what we saw with our Open SSH item. Okay, and the intention of this is that we are going to minimize the window as much as possible where those passwords can be pulled. We don't ever want them as strings. Okay, we want them as password objects, right? So that our end users are going to require a reasonably large amount, well, I shouldn't say reasonably large, a reasonable amount of knowledge to be able to ever pull those. Okay, and they shouldn't. There are some good resources, as we have one of our partners in here who from time to time I have leaned on in the world of password protection and PowerShell. For those of you who were lucky enough to be able to attend the RMM sessions at the Enable event last year in Frisco, you'll remember Alan. He was one of our guest speakers. So I will admit, I also kind of loaded my hand by seeing that he was in here and very nicely prodding, hey, Alan, if you have any suggestions, please let me know. Because he has been quite invaluable as a resource for those of us here at Enable as well as our partners. And he did bring up our Azure Key Vault, right, which is a cloud service for securing or securely storing and accessing secrets. Okay, specifically if we're looking at this, we're going to be around passwords, certs, cryptographic keys, API keys, and the like. And this has been an exceptional resource for us, especially because we require authentication to get in, right? Like a managed identity, right? Like a service principal and certificate or secret. Okay, we are encrypted during travel, and then as we come through and we look at what our roles are able to do, we can add an additional layer to this. Okay, this does help us out a reasonable amount within the security world. I'm never going to say don't look at something like this. And again, you know, we're looking at minimizing that surface area for attack when we're looking at pulling credentials in any fashion. Okay, so for those of you inside the questions pane, I'm going to send to all an answer here, and hopefully you folks can see that link from Alan. If not, always take a moment, look up the Azure Key Vault. It's well worth our time. Okay. As it stands, however, these are going to be the three primary sections where we're going to be looking at going above and beyond what we may have set or what the defaults of the dashboard are to provide additional security to our dashboards, right? Especially when we look at the information in there and accesses, we need to be aware of this. I will reiterate, since I know there was a number of us who joined late, I cannot send out the recording from today's session, but I am going to request that it goes into our Enable U YouTube channel. So if we just Google search N-Able space U, capital U, as in Utah, or Utrecht, then YouTube, Y-O YouTube, right? You get that one. You'll be able to find that recording within the upcoming days or weeks, depending on how quickly our marketing gets on this for us. For those of you in the APAC region, I'm keeping Hamish appraised of when it gets in, or at least whenever I get told it gets in. So hopefully he'll send out some communication there as well. Anywho, I don't see any additional questions. So folks, thank you so much for joining me bright and early in the morning, a little bit later in the afternoon or evening, depending on where you are in the world. As always, it's a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you in any subsequent boot camps or office hours. And hopefully I'll see you guys for some more Inform events or certificate events inside the Australia region. We'll talk to you later. Ta-ta for now.